What is this?
Yours are the first human eyes to see that evidence of past life.
Wow.
I have spent years celebrating the wonders of the natural world on my YouTube series, The Brain Scoop. Now I'm heading back to the northern Great Plains where I grew up to learn more about an area I thought I understood.
How do you know it's a dinosaur bone?
Tastes like one.
How do we know where we're going unless we know how we got here?
You know, just your average day digging through some dirt.
I don't know why I smelled it.
Oh, whoa! Does that ever get old? This is how science happens. It's cool. We could be standing on top of a T-Rex right now and we'd have no idea.
No, we wouldn't.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I am Brandis Friedman from Chicago Tonight, where I'm the co-anchor and correspondent. On behalf of WTTW and the Field Museum, thank you so much for joining us for this first look at WTTW's new series for PBS, Prehistoric Road Trip. Our purpose is to enrich lives, engage communities, and inspire exploration. Prehistoric Road Trip represents an opportunity for WTTW and the Field Museum to take our inherently curious members, viewers, and visitors on a journey of discovery. While this discussion is pre-recorded, Field Museum Chief Curiosity Correspondent and Prehistoric Road Trip host, writer, and executive producer Emily Graslie and co-executive producer and director Ali Gimbel are live in our chat right now, and they are excited to answer your questions throughout the event. So let's get started. Hello to Ali and Emily. How are you?
Hi.
So you're good.
We're good.
We're good. Emily, let's start with you. I'm curious about how and why you got into science and science education.
That's a great question. It kind of happened by accident for me, actually. I pursued art as an undergraduate in college. That's what I got a BFA in studio art, in specifically landscape painting, because I wanted to create artwork about the natural world. So I suppose I've always had an affinity for the outdoors, but it really wasn't until I began to volunteer in a small natural history museum that I learned all the different ways in which people can contribute to science. And as an artist and a communicator, I felt like I had a lot to say. And so I started a long series of blogs and then eventually a YouTube channel called The Brain Scoop, which is hosted out of the Field Museum, creating videos that celebrate the natural world.
And Ali, tell us about the road trip, because dinosaurs didn't have cars. So give us a sense of the route that you all took and why that's the route you took.
Well, a lot of the sites that we chose were very deliberate for this part of the country, primarily because the proximity to Emily's hometown of Rapid City, South Dakota, where she grew up. We really wanted the show to be a reflection of her exploring a part of the country that she is familiar with but has never maybe seen through this lens. And really wanted to expand that to where could people on a reasonable 2-week road trip with their family visit some other sites in this area that tell this incredible story of Earth's past. So in terms of selecting all of the sites, that was a collaborative process between Emily and I, and then working with all of the various locations that we feature and trying to figure out all of these great fun places to go, and some places that the public can't necessarily go to because it's private land and being prospected and worked on by academic and scientific institutions, also places like tribal lands and reservations that have their own codes around paleontology. So really trying to break into these different communities and give viewers a view into that part of the country, which is, when you get out there, you really realize how ingrained it is in that culture and in that land.
I thought it was interesting the way Emily kind of describes it in the first part of the series is, you can drive a couple of hours and several million or billion years at the same time. Emily, what was it like for you, kind of digging around basically in the area where you grew up in South Dakota? What was that like to kind of go home?
Oh, it was a wild experience. I mean, this whole entire project is such a personal journey, and we call it a personal journey of rediscovery. It was one of the things that, like, I didn't understand, as what Ali said, how ingrained paleontology and dinosaurs are in your culture until I had left Rapid City and gone off to college and lived in Chicago. And, you know, it wasn't really until even I got the job at the Field Museum where I see Sue the T-Rex all of the time, like every day. And to look at that immaculate fossil and to know that we're from the same part of the country just seemed a little too serendipitous. So I really wanted to explore that part of my own personal identity. And it's something that is shared among people in my family. So it really was that journey of rediscovery.
So here's a clip. I want to take a look at a clip from the first episode that gives everybody who's here a good sense of what we can expect in the kind of adventures that you guys went on. Here's a look.
Oh, there's one. It's the Grovant rock formation. It's 500 to 600 million years old. That is what I love about riding on this road in Wyoming, and a lot of Wyoming highways, is that they have these road signs that point out the age of the rock that you're driving by. Just amazing. You're driving through hundreds of million years of geologic time. Cool. Our road trip now moves us further ahead on the geologic timescale and into more familiar territory as we close in on dinosaur country. Tunnel time! Woo! Do you hold your breath going through tunnels? It's good luck. You make a wish. We're jumping ahead to explore fossils that preserved the late Jurassic world from 157 to 148 million years ago. They're from the Morrison Formation, which is huge. Exposures of rocks from this age can be found in 7 states. Some of the earliest dinosaur discoveries in North America happened in this formation. Elmer Riggs, founding paleontologist at Chicago's Field Museum, excavated the first ever Brachiosaurus fossil in the Morrison Formation of northern Colorado. At the time, it was one of the largest dinosaurs ever discovered. There are many other early Morrison Formation dinosaur finds made famous by the so-called Bone Wars. In the mid to late 1800s, 2 paleontologists, Edward Drinker Cope of the Academy of Natural Sciences of Philadelphia and Othniel Charles Marsh of Yale University, waged a decades-long, competitive, embittered fossil hunting battle against one another, each trying to outcompete and outpublish the other. Needless to say, it wasn't paleontology's finest moment, but it did put the Morrison Formation on the map. The Morrison has been studied by paleontologists ever since. We know from looking at Morrison fossils that the Jurassic world was lush and green, home to early mammals, pterosaurs, crocodiles, armored dinosaurs, meat eaters like Allosaurus, even frogs, salamanders, and fish. And it has continued to produce more dinosaur fossils than any other rock formation in the United States. In fact, so many fossil bones have been discovered that one man in Wyoming was inspired to create a roadside stop out of them. In the 1930s, a local man named Thomas Boylan took advantage of the abundant fossils found in this area to build this fossil cabin out of nearly 5,800 dinosaur bones in order to attract roadside travelers to stop at his gas station. Unfortunately, the fossil cabin has fallen into disrepair in recent years. But luckily, the museum in the nearby town of Medicine Bow has raised money in order to physically move and restore the building. They're bringing it into town so that it can be appreciated by tourists for generations to come. After a quick stopover in Medicine Bow, I was ready to go find a dino from one of the Morrison Formation's historic quarries, known as Como Bluff.
The Como Bluff site is one of the first sites ever found in the West.
And it was found in 1877 by 2 railroad workers who were stationed at Como Station. Previously, the only dinosaurs known in North America was from New Jersey.
Melissa Connolly is a geology professor at Casper Community College and an expert on the region's geology and history. She's part of a group from the Tate Geological Museum that carries on this century-old tradition of excavating Morrison Formation dinosaurs for research and education.
And you all are heading out to a dig that you've been working on for a while now,
Yes.
Excavating another kind of long-necked dinosaur.
Yes, so there's several long-necked dinosaurs in the Morrison Formation. Apatosaur is one of our favorites, but we also have Camarasaur and possibly a Haplocanthosaur, so that's what we're looking for.
So maybe we can go find a dinosaur.
Well, let's do it. I bet we can.
What day is it today?
Today is the first day of summer. Yes, you'll notice we're all dressed in our what
Summer
I call
finest.
North Slope Alaska gear.
Yeah.
The plan, boys and girls, get some digging tools, which are over there in the buckets.
Okay.
Let's go get you some tools. This bucket.
Hey, Pickles, you want to help?
Digging tool,
Thank you.
scooping tool.
Thank you.
JP, the museum's chief fossil preparator, welcomed a small group of dino enthusiasts from around the country who are assisting the Tate crew for the week. They're working on excavating the bones of a Diplodocus, a long-necked whip-tailed dinosaur.
We've only been out here an hour now, but that's the bone of the day so far.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
This was found just today.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is one of the, what I call final spinals.
Neat.
Maybe. It could also be someone's metatarsal.
Uh-huh.
And then the more I look at it, it might be that too. But you will find bones if you just walk around a little bit.
Really?
You might not find anything exciting, but you can find chunkosaurs. Let's see what's at our feet.
Yeah.
Oh, look at this one. I already stepped on it.
There it is.
Look, there's a piece of bone randomly distributed right here.
How do you know it's a dinosaur bone? What are the features you look at?
Tastes like one. I'm looking at bone texture.
Yeah.
It looks, texture-wise, you have these canals running through this thing, and it's also bluish gray, which is
Yeah.
fairly typical of the bones around here. Once they sit on the surface for a little while, they turn bluish gray.
So you kind of like facetiously lick this rock, but is
Yeah.
there, do paleontologists sometimes lick
Sometimes
bones?
they do.
And why do they do that?
Because supposedly bones will stick to your tongue. It depends on where they're from. And generally, it's Morrison Formation stuff doesn't. And it's full of uranium, so we don't eat it too much.
I was going to say, isn't this material somewhat radioactive?
It's somewhat radioactive. Yeah, don't try it.
Wow. Pickle's a seasoned paleontologist.
You pick a little, you brush a lot. You pick
Find
a little, you
piece
brush a
and then
lot.
just follow it.
1, 2, 3, really quick.
I was digging along this cast to try to maybe see if we could flip it later. And as I was digging, I heard a little tink in there.
Yeah.
And
struck something.
started going under the cast. So yeah, it's a whole fibula.
That's exciting.
And if we're lucky, there will be more bones underneath.
Oh, it's exciting.
It would be a lot of fun to see if there is more.
Yeah.
Just because it's small, it doesn't mean it's a negative discard bone.
Yeah.
Melissa just found a crocodile tooth over here,
Oh, what?
which
Cool.
it's one for the boys and girls in the lab to figure out, put back together. But you can see the striations on it there.
Yeah.
There's 2 halves of a crocodile tooth. That's the tip of the tooth. It's a little dirty.
Can you identify a species of crocodile just by its teeth?
Not me.
But someone
but
can.
Someone can.
Okay. So are crocodile teeth pretty rare around here?
Actually, they're the most common teeth we find.
Oh, okay.
Turtle teeth, those are rare. For those who don't know, turtles don't have teeth. Put that back in before it blows away.
All right, JP.
All right.
What are we doing?
We're gonna go plaster some bones.
All right.
I see you come equipped.
Yeah, I'm ready.
What is this?
It's a
Dinosaur bucket.
tubular.
Tubular man.
Yeah.
All right. We might not need that one.
All right.
Okay, good. Let's
There
go
we
this
go.
way. Okay, a little more. That should do us.
Oh, yeah.
You find an end.
All right. Like this?
an end, and then you pass it through my hands while I pray. See, I'm praying.
Yes.
Praying. And now I'm begging, roll it back down onto me.
Okay, like that?
That's a little sloppy. We'll work on that second time.
Okay, work on the technique.
Grab a second one.
All right. So
now I'm going to wrap this around here to protect our bones and not plaster you.
All right. And then
And then I'm going to pray.
All right.
And do you know what ribbon candy is?
Yes, like this?
Now you're going to do it ribbon candy down onto my hand.
Oh, like newbie here.
Now I beg for ribbon candy.
Okay.
Oh, look at that.
Like this.
Good form.
Oh, I see. I see. Here we go. Now we're in business.
Now we're talking.
All right. So this plaster, I mean, this really just acts as a cast, like if you had a broken arm and went to the hospital.
Yep.
And reinforces it.
Exactly. It's the same exact concept.
How long can a fossil bone stay in a plaster cast?
If they're outdoors, these things will start decomposing. 10 years?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What about once you get it to a museum? How long could they sit in a plaster jacket in a museum storage?
100 years? Only because we've been doing this only for 100 years.
That's amazing.
We collectively.
Yeah, the field of paleontology.
Yes, exactly.
Did you do anything with this extra plaster?
Yeah, you can goop some into some of these gaps. We call that goop.
Goop.
That's the technical term. Nice job.
Thanks, JP. This was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, high five.
High five.
Oh, that's a bad idea.
Man. I knew that was a bad idea, but I was going to let you do it.
Okay, so coming out of that clip, the first thing I'm wondering, Allie, is how did you guys shoot this? It looks like you probably spent a lot of time together in the car.
We did spend a lot of time together in the car. We drove around 6,000 miles the summer of 2019. So to shoot these scenes with Emily in the car, we actually had a camera mounted to the passenger side dashboard. And throughout the road trip, we would be recording with that camera with me in the passenger seat, joking around with Emily, making all stupid, funny comments, but it mixing, that in with getting her reflections of all the sites that we were exploring.
And Emily, there's a moment in the first episode where you're checking out some, and you're going to have to correct me on the sciencey terms, but cyanobacteria.
Yeah.
And you're able to relate it to how it impacts us today. Can you kind of tell us about that?
Well, when you say the word cyanobacteria or stromatolite, which the stromatolite is the fossilized traces of cyanobacteria meaning blue-green algae. So what we're talking about is essentially traces of fossil bacteria. And when you mention something like a stromatolite around geologists or paleontologists, it's a kind of buzzword that piques everybody's attention because it's a really exciting phenomenon where you can find fossils of these stromatolites all over the world, and they date to about half the age of our planet, 2 billion years old. And paleontologists and geologists understand that it's because of this blue-green algae and the way that it was metabolizing energy, essentially photosynthesizing energy from the sun and burping out oxygen as a byproduct of their energy system, that contributed to the oxygen that we have in our environment today, which is a pretty profound way to link all of life on Earth that breathes and lives in oxygen-rich environments, how we can trace back that far in Earth's history. So to find a stromatolite site within the scope of where we were filming, it was during our scouting trip when Allie and I were visiting the University of Wyoming Geological Museum when we found out about it, and both got so excited. And so we knew that it would have to be a part of the show. But the challenging thing about the stromatolite site in the Bighorn Mountains is that it's about 11,000 feet in elevation. And we needed to film there in June, which is problematic because the entire area is under about 6 feet of snowpack. So we actually had to film that scene as one of our final scenes at the end of the summer.
Oh, wow. So into the summer, like August.
Yeah. That's
by then all that snow is gone.
Right.
It was still there in places. There was still some snow.
Yeah, I noticed because you were bundled up for that part. So of course, you talked about fossils. A lot of folks, you hear fossils. Most of us just think dinosaurs, which of course you do get to later on in that first episode. Let's take another look at a very interesting clip from that episode.
We made our way to the Tate Geological Museum in Casper, Wyoming, to drop off the field jackets from our dig with JP and talk with Melissa Connolly again. I'd soon come to learn that the Tate was home to some surprises, and that Melissa had her own story about the power of an individual to make contributions, not only in science, but in the way paleontology is reflected in pop culture.
Looking at some of the strengths of the collections that you have on display, one thing that I think is really remarkable are these pterosaur tracks. When we say pterosaurs, we mean some of these flying reptiles.
Yeah, well, they have very unique morphology. So pterodactyls, pterosaurs, have a hind foot with 4 toes. And then the forearm has 3 fingers or 3 digits. Like and the 4th digit is the wing. So when you find these tracks, you can see the footprint quite easily that shows both the manus and the pes, which is the hind foot. So this is a cast of one of the original tracks that was found. And what's really cool about tracks is tracks doesn't represent a dead animal. This is a living animal, and this is behavior. So what we've preserved here, or what has been preserved and we're interpreting, is what is the behavior of these animals that died 145 million years ago. What's really cool about these tracks is what convinced the scientific community that pterosaurs were quadrupedal. They walked on all 4, and they weren't upright like ducks.
So before it was sort of like you can imagine like a bird with a webbed foot, and they're like maybe waddling or walking. And then you brought this to the scientific community. Yes. And has this been reflected in popular media, this new scientific discovery or this conclusion?
Course. Yeah, well, I mean, Jurassic Park, you know, the 3rd movie, you can see the pterosaurs walking on all 4s, and that's because of these guys.
Seeing that like in popular cinema, what does that mean to you? Like, how did you react to that?
Oh, I just cry every time I see it. Yeah, I totally do. Because, you know, this was something that we did when I was an undergrad. And so it really showed that a girl in science, in Wyoming, in a field that's just not known for having girls in there, can do something that makes a difference. You know, I can contribute to the scientific community, and we all can.
I have chills right now. It's just mind-blowing to me that you can come to those conclusions by really carefully analyzing this material. It's so cool.
I'm fascinated by the concept of fossils being able to capture the behavior and movement of an organism that lived hundreds of millions of years ago. In that sense, trace fossils are the closest thing we have to a time machine. They provide a wonderful, if limited, window into history to give us a look at a few seconds or minutes into the life of a creature that may be unlike anything else on our planet today. And so we find a way to connect with our Earth's past and begin to see ourselves in their world.
We are on our way to the Red Gulch dinosaur track site. We're gonna see some dino footprints. We're gonna see where the dinosaur walks.
East of the town of Graybull, Wyoming, is the Red Gulch Dinosaur Track Site, which is the largest track site in the state.
We're here.
In 1997, it was first reported to the local Bureau of Land Management office by residents of the nearby town who spotted the tracks while they were out enjoying the scenery. Here, not just a handful of steps, but an entire dance floor of movements from dozens of 3-toed dinosaurs has been preserved. And you can walk with them yourself.
So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Some 167 million years ago, a meat-eating 3-toed dinosaur was walking here in a shallow edge of a sea, and its footprints, because of the algae that was covering the limestone of the surface, was preserved. I think that's absolutely amazing that on an everyday life of a dinosaur ends up getting preserved for over 100 million years. Seeing trace fossils like these make me think about my own movements through the world on a daily basis, from the places that I walk to the things that I eat and the stuff that I throw away. It makes me think of the evidence that I might be leaving behind. What will future scientists think when they come across traces of our lives?
Okay, so Emily, you know, as a woman in science, a champion of women in science, what was that moment like when you hear Melissa Connolly explain what that meant to her What was it like for you being able to elevate another woman in science?
I just think her message is so exciting and so true to what we experienced again and again throughout this series, which is that paleontology is one of the most accessible sciences in terms of being able to get the public interested in it, but also being able to get the public involved in it, and also being able to make contributions no matter what your background or educational level is. So Melissa Connolly, to make such an important contribution to the scientific field as an undergraduate, and as she says, as a woman in Wyoming, and this would have been some time ago, right, when there were certainly fewer women in these roles in the media then, they're still rare today. It's just exciting to help to use our platform to help elevate those voices, and that's something that I care about personally. So I'm glad we could share her story.
What, and this question is for either of you, what is your advice to other girls, young women interested in pursuing careers in science?
My advice is to get out there, and to explore, to feel like even if you don't see yourself reflected in these roles in the media or online, and this applies to women, it applies to the LGBTQ community, it applies to people of different racial and ethnic backgrounds. We try to create representation and to share our platform, and so people can see themselves in those roles. But also, if you don't see yourself reflected out there, that's also a cue that this could be you. You could be the change. You could be that role model for young viewers at home, to give them additional push or further inspiration to help them realize, like, science is something that I can do. I see myself reflected in science in the world.
And Allie, if you could talk a little bit about how you made the science relatable, because, some folks who are not that familiar with it might hear it and, just their eyes glaze over because they don't think they're going to understand. But even as I was watching, I felt like I was learning and I was able to understand. How did you kind of make it a point to make sure that it was relatable and understandable?
Well, I walked into this project having absolutely zero background in paleontology, and I have some baseline knowledge of earth science from middle school, so I definitely learned along the process and brought that point of view in as well. But at the same time, I think that that's the fun of this kind of storytelling is, and the way that I think Emily very smartly approached this whole series, which is, let's invite people into the experience of paleontology, not necessarily all of the papers and there's so much work that goes into these discoveries that we don't show, that take years and years of going out in the field and exploring. And that was the exciting stuff that paleontology has, which is all of this field work that most people don't get to see, I think is just inherently exciting and interesting. So that's how I approached it.
What was one of the more surprising things that you learned? What was the most just stunning?
I mean, I think just even the fact that there is such a rich history of paleontology in the United States, and that so many fossils come from here, that I had no idea about. And also that, you don't just go take a shovel and dig up a dinosaur, that it's not that simple.
What? Sure it is.
It was definitely a surprise to me to first find out and learn, first of all, they're everywhere. It's just the ability to find them is so dependent on the way the earth has changed over the last couple, few billion years, that you have access to them. And that part was what blew my mind.
Emily, what about you? Because obviously, you go into this with some experience and some knowledge. What was the most stunning or surprising thing that you learned?
Oh, well, I mean, it was the same for me too. I took a geoscience, a what they called a Rocks for Jocks class in college. I think it needs to be renamed. That's not a fair name of that course. But I also didn't really realize how rich the fossil and geologic diversity was in that part of the country. And like Allie said, Sue the T-Rex, this phenomenal dinosaur discovery. Tyrannosaurus Rex is arguably the most famous animal that has ever lived, hands down. And to know that one of the best preserved ones was found 5 miles off of the place where I grew up, running around in the pastures and fields of my dad's farmland. I just didn't, I always wanted to know if like there was one on our land as well. But like Allie mentioned, it's not as easy as just taking a shovel and digging it up. So there is so much work that goes into it. But I think what surprised me the most is just learning how many different people and different facets of our communities and within the scientific community, within just regional communities, just how much people care about paleontology and sharing that. We were welcomed into so many different field sites with so many different people. And that feeling of science being inclusive and welcoming and exciting and collaborative is really different than what you think about when you think of science. Oftentimes you think of the lone person, the like genius with the frizzy hair, you know, in their lab by themselves, kind of maniacally laughing. And this just couldn't have been further from the truth from what we experienced.
Before I let you guys go, I want to ask both of you this question. And Allie, I'll start with you, please. What is it that you hope people take away from watching this series?
Oh, I hope that people watch this series and feel inspired to explore maybe this part of the country, maybe someplace where they live nearby, to get outside, get into nature, and look down and think about the story that the earth can tell them about their past, but also about where we are now. And you know, just in so many times throughout filming, even just off when the cameras were off and we were on our own, like we had the opportunity to just go out and appreciate nature. And I think by understanding more of the history, the way that our earth has sustained over billions of years, has supported so much life, so much diversity of life. One of the big statistics that always stands out to me is that 99% of all species of life that have ever lived on this planet ever are extinct. And this was something that like just it blows your mind that this planet has been home to so much diversity, so much change, and to really reflect on where you stand in that story.
Emily, what about you?
That was a really good answer, but really similar. You know, there's a great quote in the third episode from Dr. Reagan Dunn, who's a paleontologist. She studies fossil plants, and she just says, like, how do we know where we're going if we don't know where we've been? And it's true for American history. It's true for world history. It's true for geologic history. You know, we don't know where we're heading, hurtling on this rock in space, unless we really take the time to meaningfully reflect on what this planet has been through, and also to take, you know, accountability for what we have done to the planet in such a short amount of time. You know, the world has been through major mass extinction events before. There has been tremendous upheaval, but never to this extent that humans are doing to our planet today. And that can be a lot to handle. There's a gravity to that. And we don't want that to feel as overwhelming as it may be, but instead hoping that by showing all of these different scenes and the many ways in which people can participate and advocate for the natural world, that viewers would be able to see themselves in that and look inward and reflect on how they can contribute to positive change.
Well said, both of you. Congratulations on wrapping this up, getting it done, and it going on air very soon. Yeah, absolutely. So to our viewers, our party goers, I want you to know Prehistoric Road Trip premieres on WTTW and on PBS stations nationwide on 3 consecutive Wednesdays. And that starts, mark your calendars, June 17th at 9 p.m. Central. And of course, it'll be streaming on WTTW.com/prehistoric road trip. And of course, on the PBS app. And don't forget to tune in and also visit WTTW's companion website, again, WTTW.com/prehistoric road trip. And that is where you can extend the adventure with a virtual road trip, some video extras, and travel journals. Thank you for joining us, and we hope that you enjoy Prehistoric Road Trip.